everybody, welcome to Stonx Music. My name's Ollie and today we're going to be having a look at Vocoder in this deep dive session. Let's go! Right, so here we are back in the Ableton Manual. Let's see what they've got to say about it. A vocoder is an effect that combines the frequency information of one audio signal, called the carrier, with the amplitude contour of another audio signal, called the modulator. The modulator's source is generally something with a clear rhythmic character, such as speech or drums, while the carrier is typically a harmonically rich synthesizer sound, such as a string or pad. The most familiar application of a vocoder is to create talking synthesizer or robotic effects. Vocoders work by running both the carrier and modulator signals through banks of bandpass filters. The output level of each of the modulator's filters is then analysed and used to control the volume of the corresponding filter for the carrier signal. Live's vocoder should be inserted on the track that contains the audio material you plan to use as your modulator. The carrier chooser then provides a variety of options for the carrier signal. Noise uses vocoder's internal noise generator as the carrier source. With this selected, an XY display is shown which allows you to adjust the character of the noise. The horizontal axis adjusts downsampling. Click and drag to the left to decrease the sample rate of the carrier's output. The vertical axis adjusts the density of the noise. Click and drag downward to decrease the density. External allows you to select any available internal routing points from the choosers below. This is the option you'll want for classic robot voice applications. Modulator uses the modulator itself as the carrier. This essentially outputs a resynthesized version of the modulator signal, but allows you to use vocoder's sound shaping controls to adjust the sound. Pitch tracking enables a monophonic oscillator which tunes itself to the pitch of the modulator. The high and low sliders allow you to limit the frequency range that the oscillator will attempt to track. Choose from sawtooth or one of the three pulse waveforms and adjust the coarse tuning of the oscillator via the pitch slider. Pitch tracking is particularly effective with monophonic modulator sources such as melodic instruments or voices. Note that the oscillator only updates its frequency when it detects a clear pitch. It then maintains this pitch until it detects a new one. This means that changing the oscillator's parameters or causing it to reset, when grouping vocoder's track for example, can cause unexpected changes in the sound. With polyphonic material or drums, pitch tracking is generally unpredictable but can be very interesting. Particularly when using carrier sources, a vocoder's output can sometimes lose a lot of high end. Enabling the enhance button results in a brighter sound by normalizing the spectrum and dynamics of the carrier. The unvoiced knob adjusts the volume of an additional noise generator, which is used to resynthesize portions of the modulated signal that are pitchless, such as F and S sounds. Sense sets the sensitivity of the unvoiced detection algorithm. At 100%, the unvoiced noise generator is always on. At 0%, only the main carrier source is used. The fast-slow switch adjusts how quickly vocoder switches between unvoiced and voiced detection. Vocoder's large central area shows the levels of the individual bandpass filters. Clicking within this display allows you to attenuate these levels. The band chooser sets the number of filters that will be used. Using more bands results in a more accurate analysis of the modulator's frequency content, but requires more CPU. The range slider adjusts the frequency range over which the bandpass filter will operate. For most sources, a fairly large range works well, but you may want to adjust the outer limits if the sound becomes too piercing or bassy. The BW control sets the bandwidth of the filters. At low percentages, each filter approaches a single frequency. As you increase the bandwidth, you increase the overlap of the filter bands. A bandwidth of 100% is the most accurate, but higher or lower settings can create interesting effects. The precise retro switch toggles between two types of filter behavior. In precise mode, all filters have the same gain and bandwidth. In retro mode, bands become narrower and louder at higher frequencies. Gate sets a threshold for the filter bank. Any bands whose level are below the threshold will be silent. The level slider boosts or cuts vocoder's output. Depth sets how much of the modulator's amplitude envelope is applied to the carrier signal. At 0%, the modulator's envelope is discarded. At 200%, only high amplitude peaks will be used. 100% results in classic vocoding. The attack and release controls set how quickly vocoder responds to amplitude changes in modulator signal. Very fast times preserve the transients of the modulator but can cause distortion artifacts. The mono stereo switch determines how many channels are used for the carrier and modulator. In mono mode, both the carrier and modulator are treated as mono sources. Stereo uses a mono modulator but processes the carrier in stereo. LR processes both the carrier and modulator signals in stereo. The frequency of the carrier's filter bank can be shifted up or down via the Formant knob. With voices as the modulator, small formant changes can alter the apparent gender of the source. The dry-wet control adjusts the balance between the processed and dry signals. Vocoder tips. This section explains how to set up the most common vocoder applications. Singing synthesizer. A classic vocoder application is the singing synthesizer. To set this up in live, insert vocoder in the track that contains your vocal material. You can either use a clip that contains a pre-recorded voice or to process a live vocal signal. Connect a microphone to your channel on your audio hardware and choose this as the input source. Insert a synthesizer such as analog in another track. Again, you can either create a MIDI clip to drive the synthesizer or play it live. Set the vocoder's carrier chooser to external. Select the synthesizer track in the vocoder's audio from chooser. For best results, choose post effects in the bottom chooser. If you're creating your synthesizer and vocal material in real time, make sure the arm button is enabled on both tracks. Play the synthesizer as you speak into the microphone. You'll hear the rhythm of your speech, but with a timbral character and frequency of the synthesizer. To hear the vocoded signal alone, solo the voice track so that the normal synthesizer track is muted. Note, you'll generally get best results if your synthesizer sound is bright and rich in harmonics. Try sawtooth bass patches to improve the intelligibility of the voice. For even more brightness and clarity, try adjusting the unvoiced control and/or enable enhance. Formant Shifter. If the vocoder is set to use the modulator as its own carrier, it can be used as a powerful formant shifter. To do this, set the carrier chooser to modulator, set the depth to 100% and enable enhance. Now experiment with different settings of the formant knob to alter the character of the sources. For even more sound sculpting possibilities, try adjusting the various filter bank parameters as well. Right, that's Vocoder. Let's jump into Ableton and see what we can do with it. Right, so here we are back in Ableton. Let's have a quick look at Vocoder. So there's a few different things that I do. The first one we're going to start off with is a bit of a strange one, but essentially I like to use Vocoder as an EQ. So if we turn Vocoder off here and have a listen to the sound, it's just a big resound I've resampled out. And with our Vocoder on, see straight away you lose a bit of sound. Let's click enhance. So it does lose a little bit of sound, but the cool thing is we now have these bands. So I've got it on 4-band mode because it's simple, but you can go up to more if you need it. So let's just turn all of these down. Nothing comes through. Just the lows. Lows and highs. Rename that to low. Low mid. Mid. High. It just gives us another way to split our bands. This one up, this one down. This one up, this one down. So now we have our different bands. So you do lose a little bit of quality. I can tell there's some highs lost, but if we're going to be doing a bunch of processing after this anyway, it doesn't really matter too much. So we could saturate those highs, put in some chorus. Let's just solo these and see what we're doing. Nice. How's our lows? We could put a utility in and just bass mono, say 150. Probably won't make much difference. Low mids, what we've got going on here. Might be nice to add a bit of reverb to just those low mids. We can do a low cut. Take that away. Bit of space. So it's just another way. It's not the most transparent. I would still use multi-band dynamics if you really want a transparent crossover, but it's still a nice way to just kind of do some quick EQing and also create these band passes with the bandpass filters. So that's one of the weird things I like to do with Vocoder. So next up we have using it in its standard way as a vocoder. So here I've got my trigger channel, which has the vocoder on it, and we have external, carrier from, carrier MIDI, and post effects, as they've said. I've turned the carrier MIDI off, and here we have an operator. Let's put it to saw. What's the next one? Square. Let's put that to saw as well. So we've got a nice rich sound. And if I just turn this on, we can have a listen. It's a nice, bright, rich sound. So we're going to arm this track and arm this track. I'm going to mute my microphone in OBS, so it's just coming out through here. And let's... This is a Vocoded voice. Pretty much as easy as that. Once it's set up, you can just play your notes. They're going to come through in this vocoded sound. So once you've got this here, you can then mess around with what bands are going to be popping through. Vocoded voice. So I don't really personally use this that much in that context. Taking this same principle, I rarely use it to kind of make these singing robot, Daft Punk style-y kind of things. I rarely use it for that, but the one thing that I do like to do is grab my big nasty basses. Let's have a quick listen here. And instead of using it to make the basses talk, I like to kind of try and get some rhythms in there. So you can do this with sidechain compression. There's a bunch of ways you could program it all in. But one of the things that I like to do is just kind of help build up these kind of rhythmic ideas without having to think too much about it, basically. So vocoder on, I can press my notes and I can get the rhythms in there. So I can go. And if I turn my microphone off, I use my computer keyboard to play these notes. I don't have an external MIDI keyboard. I just think that's a really nice way to get some kind of human elements and some more kind of groove back into your music. So same way you'd set up a normal vocoder, but rather than talking into it, I'm just bam, bam, ba-dam, bam, boom, bam, ba-reba, boo, boo, boom, 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 ba-reba, boo, boo. Just kind of trying to add some of that real life kind of groove back into the sounds. That's really fun one I like to do. So the next thing I like to do is just kind of crazy sound design spatial stuff. And for this, we set it to noise. So we don't have a carrier signal. We're going to be using our own signal now. And let me just group and turn these off for a minute. I can see what I recorded here. And this is just me bashing a bunch of things in my room. That is literally it. So let's have a quick listen. Pretty boring, easy to do. Turn the microphone on and hit a bunch of things. So with our vocoder on, and then our slew of effects, you can hear a lot of kind of crazy, big, weird sounds. I'll just play it and you can hear. Just hear it gives a difference to the resonant frequencies it's kind of picking up on. So it's a really nice one just to kind of create some atmosphere within your tracks. Next up, we have the Formant Shift that they mentioned in the manual. So what we've done here is we've got our dry sound and our formant. So let's turn the dry sound off, open this one up. And it's just setting it to modulator mode. So it's using its own input. We've got no unvoiced and no sensitivity. And I've messed a bit with the low end just to get rid of it. And our formant is what's given us this sound here. So let's have a listen. So let's put the bass back in. So I didn't want all that bass. I kind of took it off at an angle. And then I've added this back in with the original. So listen to it before and after. It's just added this layer of kind of crunchy stuff. I'd say it's probably a bit loud. We could dip it by 6 maybe. Just adds that other layer of kind of crunchy, gritty stuff to your sounds. And lastly, we have a harmonizer. Now, this is a really weird one. I don't use it too often, but it's a sound that I really like. It can quite easily be overused. So what we've done is we've got it in pitch tracking mode. So it's going to pick up the pitch of what we're playing and try and track along with it. The first one here, enhances on pitch tracking mode. I've set all the way down and all the way up. So our high and low, the oscillator is going to try and chase the notes as much as possible. And I've got the first one, a pitch at 12. The second one with a pitch at 4. So 4 is like our major third. 4 semitones up. And then we've got our dry down here. So let me turn the dry on. And I've just grabbed a fuzzy electric guitar preset. And let's have a listen. Which I just absolutely love, that kind of madness to it. And if you want to get even crazier, you could add another one. We could like duplicate this and make this up 7, so it does a 5th as well. We could duplicate again and do one that's like upper, instead of this 4, let's do 3, so it's a minor third. And this one that we've added that's 7, let's do a 9. And now you're just going to start getting gnarly, gnarly, crazy noises. And if we get rid of our original, you're just left with the crazy noises. I wouldn't suggest playing chords. So you start building up these weird chords and just fun harmonies. I mean, that's doing it live with the guitar, but you could also add this onto your other sounds. So if we had something like, let's just grab this big old bass again. And with our dry, let's turn that off. So we've got our original bass sound here. And then with all of these weird pitch tracked harmonies, you get this. Which you might not like, you might not think's usable, but one of the things that's quite fun with this is trying to build a chord up. So we've got our 12, our minor, our 5th, and then our 9 semitones up. So we could new audio track from here and resample out just that chord sound. And it gives us more stuff to work with. I'm always one for trying to create sounds out of sounds that we've already got. So let's just record this in. And now we have this kind of really weird crunchy pad sound, which we can use as a chord. Right, so the last thing I want to do is looking at vocals again, but this time we're looking at kind of big, horrible, distorted, messy vocals, kind of akin to black metal, industrial, Author and Punisher, that kind of just big, massive, screechy, distorted sound. So for this one, we're going to go back to noise mode as the carrier, and we're going to turn unvoiced up. You can mess with the sensitivity as well. I like it both ways. I find at the top it's a bit harsher and crunchier. And I've just drawn some of the mids away here, so it's not quite as distorted in the mids, and got rid of some of the highs because I found it was kind of poking out a bit. Saturator afterwards, and glue compressor. So this sound is really just that big, screamy vocals without having to do big, screamy vocals yourself. So you can pretty much whisper scream, just kind of go bah, 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 into it, obviously with words if you want. Yeah, so let's have a quick listen to that. We got this. Destroy the Abernard, desolation and despair. So that's just a really nice way to kind of add these crazy sounds. And I was literally just, destroy the Abernard. It just has to be a kind of a raspy, whispered scream. And this completely just pushes it to that level. So with a bit of extra processing after that, you can get some pretty decent sounds if you're into that big, screamy, industrial kind of thing, which I must say I'm partial to now and then. So it's a really nice one just to kind of boof out those big, scratchy vocals. All right, everyone, that'll do it for this episode of Deep Dive. Hopefully you've learned a thing or two about Vocoder. If you thought it was just for those kind of Daft Punk singy sounds, hopefully you've learned some new ways to use it, using it as a harmonizer, using the kind of EQ section of it because of the bandpass filters, or using the unvoiced modes to kind of get these big screechy sounds or these kind of sound design noises. So, as always, project files are available down below if you want to get your hands on those projects. Don't forget to subscribe if you want to see more of these deep dive sessions, and I'll catch up with you lot next time. Bye!